It's Jody with All About the Harvest, where I teach you how to grow, use, and preserve your harvest. And today we are talking about week 4 of the Pantry Challenge. And the Pantry Challenge is where you try to use food in your house before going grocery shopping. And to learn more about the Pantry Challenge, I have a Pantry Challenge playlist. I will link it up above and below this video so that you can check out all the Pantry Challenge videos. Today I am talking about the 4th week of the Pantry Challenge. Now for me, the 4th week of the Pantry Challenge started on Wednesday the 22nd and ended on Tuesday the 28th. Now for these first 4 weeks in January, we have not gone to the grocery store. Let me tell you about the meals we made this week. Hopefully you can get some inspiration on how to use up the food in your pantry, your freezers, your fridge, etc. On Wednesday, I made a blueberry banana nut butter smoothie. So if you remember, I have told you in some of the previous videos in this Pantry Challenge that I have a lot of fruit in my freezer and I want to use them up. And so one of the ways I thought that I could use some of them up was by doing a smoothie, or I call them a green drink. So I followed a recipe called blueberry almond butter smoothie, and I got this recipe from this particular book by Danette May. It's called Bikini Body Recipes, and years ago I followed Danette May. She uses a lot of healthy ingredients, and so I got this book and I went through it to just find some smoothies, and this particular one is the one that I made. I will oftentimes substitute things that are similar, and so let me tell you what the recipe is and then I will tell you how I made substitutions. So this particular recipe called for a half a cup of frozen blueberries, which I did use. It called for 2 tablespoons of almond butter. I use the Costco mixed nut butter because I had that open and in my fridge, and so it's a combination of mixed nuts and seeds. So I use that. 1 ripe banana. Now I had 1 banana that was frozen in my freezer, so I used that. It calls for 1/2 a cup of spinach, and I used some frozen lamb's quarters. Now lamb's quarters is a wild spinach. It's also called goosefoot. I did a video on lamb's quarters and how you can identify it, how you can use it, but it's commonly called a weed, but it is very, very nutritious. And so I had some growing in my garden, harvested that, and then I froze it. And so what I did is I threw some of that into my smoothie in place of the spinach. And it was frozen. This recipe calls for fresh, but it doesn't really matter because you're going to be drinking it anyways. A tablespoon of lemon juice. It called for 2 tablespoons of flax seeds or chia seeds. I had some flax seeds in my fridge, but when I took them out and I opened the bag, they had gone bad. They were rancid, so I tossed them. They were in there a long time. So I did have a bag of chia seeds. There was just a little bit left of the chia seeds in that bag, so I used that bag up. We do have another bag downstairs, but I didn't want to go down there and get it. So for this particular recipe, I just added additional nut butter because the nut butter had like chia seeds in it. So I just added some additional nut butter. 3 medjool or deglet pitted dates, and then 2 cups of water. Basically what you do is you combine all those ingredients in a blender and blend until smooth. And so I made that, and that is what I made that day for like my breakfast lunch kind of drink. It was nice because I got some things out of the freezer and some things out of the fridge. As like a kind of later day, late lunch, I had some sausage and crackers, and then there was a chunk of cheese that we had in the fridge, and I used that up and made that with the sausage. So sausage, cheese, and crackers. For dinner I had some leftover venison potatoes and mushrooms and onions that we had made 2 days prior to that. So I ate that for dinner that night, and that night for dinner, my husband had the leftover Polska kielbasa sausage with cabbage and onion. We finished those meals up, and so that was Wednesday. And then on Thursday, I made myself, in the morning, I had a cold coffee mixed with like a protein coffee mix and some of my chaga ice cubes. So I had that in the morning. And then I had to go down to Madison for a medical appointment. From the time I leave to the time I get home, it's like 6 hours later. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to make sure that I had some food in my belly before I went, and I was going to try not to stop and like get anything to eat on the way there or back, which I succeeded in. So before I left, I made some brown and served sausage links. I had 2 eggs with that, and then for toast, we didn't have any sandwich bread left. From the freezer, I took out some hamburger buns, and I just put them in my toaster and I toasted them. So the hamburger bun was my toast, and so I had 3 sausage links, the bun, which was toasted, and then the 2 eggs. And then I also had like a mini bottle of orange juice that I had that I wanted to use up. So that was what I had for my lunch. And then I also made myself a hot tea so that when I drove down to Madison and back, I had that to sip on. And then when I came back that evening, my husband wanted to go out for dinner because he was leaving the next day for the weekend. It was his birthday that weekend, and he had some plans away with some friends. So we went out to a steakhouse that night. I had ordered tenderloin and scallops, and my husband got a steak as well. We both had potato skins, and we each got a salad and a soup. Now, that's a lot of food, so what we did is we just said, can you box up our salads and our soups so that we can just take them home? And so that's what we did. So we ended up taking home the salads and soups, and you'll see I ended up eating those over the next couple days. And then I had some leftover steak and scallops and potato skins. So I ended up eating those over the next couple days as well, which you'll see. That was Thursday, the 23rd. And then on Friday, I had my leftover scallops and steak and some potato skins for lunch. Later on in the day, I had a salad with the rest of my steak and potato skins. And then that evening I made something, it's called Catalina dip. It is basically a combination of cream cheese, onions, and Catalina dressing. And you can mix in a little bit of like milk or heavy whipping cream to make it a little bit smoother. That's generally how we make it. Now, in my fridge, I had already some cream cheese mixed with chives, onion powder, and garlic salt. And I use that mixture for inside of my jalapeno poppers. And so because I have no more fresh jalapenos, what I decided to do was just use the rest of that and then add in another 8-ounce container of cream cheese, and then, add the onions and then the Catalina dressing. And I found that I didn't need to add any of milk or anything like that to it because I added enough Catalina dressing to it that was liquidy enough. Now typically what we do with this is something that we would dip potato chips in. And I knew I had some open potato chips in the cupboard, and also I know that this is something that my husband likes, so I was able to get rid of something that was in the fridge and use up some additional ingredients as well. So I made that on Friday. So then on Friday, I also ate the rest of my fermented rhubarb. And so I got that out of the fridge. So that was good. On Friday evening, I also had one of the soups that we got for dinner the night before. So that is what I had on Friday. My husband, again, he went up north, but when he was home for lunch, he did have a pizza. Then he went up north with his friends for the weekend. Now, Saturday, I ended up making 1 egg for breakfast. I had 3 of those brown and served sausage links, and I had another hamburger bun as my toast, and then I had the last little individual bottle of orange juice. So I finished those up, which was good. For lunch, I had another salad, the other one that we had from leftovers from Thursday, and then I had the other soup that we had gotten from when we went out for dinner on Thursday. That evening, I had some cottage cheese, and then I had some coleslaw. And then on Sunday, I made a blueberry cottage cheese breakfast bake. So this was one of those recipes that I saw on Facebook, as I'm scrolling, and it looked pretty decent, and I had the ingredients to make it, so I went ahead and made it. So this was the recipe that I used. It was 1 cup of cottage cheese, a half a cup of rolled oats, a half a cup of fresh blueberries. I used frozen because that's what I had. 2 large eggs, 1/4 cup honey or maple syrup. I used maple syrup because I had some in the fridge that I wanted to use. A half a teaspoon of cinnamon and a 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and then a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. After I made this recipe, I saw this recipe in other places, but some of the ingredients were a little bit different. Like, for example, I think it had you use a cup of oats and a cup of blueberries. So this one made a smaller amount. It said it made 4 servings. So I had that for breakfast that morning. I ended up like cutting it into 4 pieces. I did like an 8x8 pan. I ended up putting on some of my mixed nut butter that I have in the fridge. So what I did is every time I'd have some, I would put a couple spoonfuls of the mixed nut butter on top of it, and then I would eat it that way. And I just ate it cold. I didn't warm it up. It was warm when I first ate it, but then like subsequent portions of it, I have eaten it just cold. So that was the blueberry cottage cheese breakfast bake. That day I ate some Catalina dip with some chips. That day I was pretty busy. I was bottling wine. I make my own wine and I have a ton of wine. And so I just needed to get this bottled. And so that is what I did that day. I had to do a lot, and I was cleaning carboys. There was just a lot to do. So the food that I ate was going to be like quick and easy. And that's why like when I was hungry, I would just eat some Catalina dip and some chips. And then later on that evening, I had a can of Chef Boyardee ravioli in the pantry, so I just grabbed a can of that. And typically when I have that, I have buttered bread, and I use that to soak up the sauce. But because we were out of sandwich bread, and the only kind of bread that I had that would have worked were those hamburger buns again. We don't eat a lot of buns unless we're going to have like a hamburger. So I just been using them as toast, right? And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to toast them as well and put some butter on them, and then I used that to soak up the Chef Boyardee sauce. So that is what I had that evening for dinner. And then on Monday, I had more of that blueberry breakfast bake with the peanut butter on top of it, or the nut butter. And then I had some of that leftover coleslaw. I finished that. So for dinner, I used up this bolognese meat that I had in the freezer, and I made a box of Texas toast that we had in the freezer. For that bolognese meat, I ended up adding a can of spaghetti sauce to it because it was really kind of dry. Now, initially what I did is I put some homemade tomato juice in with it, just put a little bit in, and then I realized it needed something more, so that's when I grabbed a can of spaghetti sauce. So for pasta, we have a ton of different types of pasta. I looked up what is the best kind of noodles to use with bolognese sauce. In the article that I read, the first noodle I didn't have, but the second noodle was pappardelle, and I might be pronouncing that incorrectly. We happen to have that noodle, so that is what I made with this particular recipe. Both my husband and I really enjoyed it. It was really good. And then there was enough for 2 more meals of leftovers, which my husband ended up eating the next 2 days. So then on Tuesday the 28th, I had another egg, the last 3 of the brown and served sausage links, and then the last of my frozen hamburger buns toasted. So that was kind of what I had for like a late breakfast lunch type thing. I did end up having some Catalina dip and chips, and then my husband was at work all day, and he came home, and when he was at work he went out to eat with his team because they hired somebody new, and he brought home a half of a Reuben sandwich and some sweet potato fries. And he asked me if I wanted them. So that is what I had for dinner. And then he had that leftover pasta with the bolognese sauce and some garlic bread. And then later on in the evening, I just had some string cheese and nuts and some pretzels, some tomato juice, and some pickled products that I had in my fridge. I emptied one jar of some pickled foods because remember, I'm trying to get rid of all the stuff in my fridge, and so pickled products, I have so many of them. In my mind, I was thinking, okay, have a Bloody Mary. I just had tomato juice. I didn't have a Bloody Mary, but I did have some pickled products. So on Tuesday, I ended up taking out a 16-ounce bottle of blueberry juice from the freezer because I was going to be bottling up some wine and I wanted to add some additional flavor to it. So I took that out and I thawed it and then I added it to the wine before racking it. I didn't rack it that night, but I did take that out. So that is another thing that is out of the freezer. Also on Tuesday night, I used a 32-ounce container of strawberry dragon fruit concentrate that I wanted to add to this particular wine just to enhance some of the flavor for it. It's from the Tractor Beverage Company is what I use. I have a picture there. I get this from Azure Standard. I'll link Azure below. You can get all sorts of great stuff from them. I do have an Azure Standard playlist as well, and I'll link that below. And on that note, on Sunday when I was also racking some of my wine and bottling my wine, there was another one that I was making. It was an elderflower wine that I make, so I have my own elderberry plants. And so I started making this elderflower wine. I decided I wanted to maybe add something else to it to just kind of enhance the flavor a little bit. And so I added a 32-ounce container of the peach concentrate from Tractor Beverage Company. And if you look at the ingredients on these, they're organic, they're pretty good ingredients. So if you're into that, Azure has a lot of natural and organic products. They have everything: dried goods, frozen goods, fresh goods, vitamins, you name it, they have it. You can get pretty decent pricing. So I'll link them below. You can check them out for yourself. And again, I'll link the Azure Standard playlist in the description below as well. That was week 4. So week 4 went pretty strong. Still haven't gone to the grocery store, and I'm slowly working through things in my fridge. I'm trying to get things out of my freezer. I'm going to start doing a little series of how do you use this item, a short where I show you an ingredient and I get you to tell me how you use that particular ingredient or that item, maybe some of your favorite recipes. And that way other people, if they have that same thing that they want to use but they don't know how to use it, or they want tried and true recipes, that they can look. So if you have certain ingredients that you're like, how do you use this? Put it in the comments below and I will add that to the list of ones that we're going to ask about. So make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow me on YouTube and on my All About the Harvest page on Facebook, because I will be posting there as well. So you'll see comments there, you'll see comments on YouTube. And I just wanted to give you that little bit of heads up. So as I say every week, let me know how you're doing with this pantry challenge in the comments below. Let me know if there's any ingredients that you have at your house that you want some ideas for how to use. And until next week, good luck on your pantry challenge.